At my son's birthday party, I saw a photograph of myself and my new husband taped to the front door with a notice written underneath. These poor people are strictly prohibited from entering. My husband and I smiled and walked away, leaving a gift box in the lobby. 2 hours later, during the toast, my son opened it. When he pulled out what was inside, the champagne flutes fell from his hands. The sound of crystal shattering against the marble floor came first. Then came the silence, a silence so heavy it seemed to drown the 200 people standing in that ballroom. My son Julian, the successful businessman, the man everyone admired that night, was on his knees. His hands were shaking, his face was white, completely white, as if he had seen a ghost. Victoria, his wife, took a step back, then another. Her eyes were wide as saucers. Someone screamed. The murmurs began to grow like waves. Phones were raised. Flashes started firing. I wasn't there. I had been banned from entering. But I was watching everything from the screen of my phone, sitting in my humble house next to Jack, the man my son despised. And after 40 years of sacrifice, after giving everything for that ungrateful boy, I was finally watching his perfect world crumble piece by piece. But to understand how a simple gift box destroyed my own son's life, I have to take you back 3 hours to the exact moment it all began. Comment where you are watching this story from. I need to know how many mothers are tired of ingratitude. It was 6:30 in the evening when Jack and I arrived at the Grand Plaza Hotel, the most exclusive venue in the entire city. The golden lights on the facade shone like jewels. A red carpet was rolled out from the street to the main entrance. Imported cars arrived one after another. Mercedes, BMWs, Porsches. The valets ran from one side to the other, opening doors. Women stepped out in long silk gowns in champagne, silver, and emerald green. They wore jewelry that shone brighter than the hotel lights. The men wore suits that probably cost $3,000 or more. We parked our old car a block away. We didn't want anyone to see it. Jack was wearing the only suit he owned, a gray one he had bought 10 years ago for our wedding. I was wearing a simple wine-colored dress I had found at a thrift store. I had done my hair myself. We didn't have money for beauty salons or makeup artists, but we looked dignified, clean, presentable. Jack took my hand as we walked toward the entrance. His fingers were rough from years of working with wood. He was a carpenter, an honest man who earned a living with his own hands, a man who truly loved me, who respected me, who had never made me feel like less for not having money. We had married 2 years ago, after I spent 15 years alone, a widow, raising Julian without help from anyone. Julian, my only son, the boy to whom I gave everything, absolutely everything. We walked up the hotel stairs. The music could already be heard from outside. Something classical, elegant, played by a live orchestra. I could smell the floral arrangements from the street. Roses, lilies, gardenias. The scent was so strong it was dizzying. We reached the main entrance. 2 security guards dressed in black stood like statues on either side of the glass doors. And then I saw it. Taped to the glass door, at eye level, was a photograph. A letter-sized photograph, printed in color, laminated. It was a photo of me and Jack. That photo had been taken 6 months ago when we went to visit Julian at his office. I was smiling. Jack had his arm around my shoulders. We looked happy. In love. But underneath the photograph was a text written in large red letters, impossible to ignore. These poor people are strictly prohibited from entering. I felt as if someone had punched me in the stomach. The air escaped my lungs. Jack squeezed my hand so hard it hurt. The security guards looked at us. One of them had a small smirk in the corner of his mouth. The other simply watched us, waiting to see what we would do. The people entering the hotel began to stop. They looked at the photo. They looked at us. Then they looked at the photo again. I heard snickers, whispers. A woman in a coral dress whispered something to her date, and both laughed as they passed by us. My son, my own son, the boy I had carried in my arms, the boy I fed when we had nothing to eat, the boy for whom I worked 3 jobs for years so he could go to an Ivy League school. That boy was now a 38-year-old man who had put my photograph at the entrance of his birthday party with a sign calling me poor and banning me from entering. Jack looked at me. His eyes were full of rage. I saw his jaw clench. His hands closed into fists. He wanted to go in. He wanted to rip that photo down. He wanted to confront Julian in front of all his rich guests and tell him exactly what he thought of him. I knew him. I loved him. And I knew he was about to explode, but I put my hand on his chest. I took a deep breath, and I smiled. Yes, I smiled. Because Jack didn't know what I knew. He didn't know what I had been planning for the last 3 years. He didn't know that this public humiliation, this moment of maximum shame, was exactly what I needed to execute my plan. A plan that would make this photograph on the door look like a childish prank compared to what was coming. I took a box out of my purse, a rectangular gift box, wrapped in shiny silver paper, with a maroon bow on top. The box wasn't big. It measured maybe 12 inches long by 8 inches wide, but what was inside that box was a bomb that would destroy everything Julian had built. I approached one of the security guards, the one with the mocking little smile on his face. "Excuse me," I said in the sweetest voice I could manage. "Could you do me the favor of delivering this gift to Julian Sterling? It is from his mother. Tell him I regret not being able to enter, but that I hope he enjoys his gift during the toast." The guard took the box. He looked at it with suspicion, as if it were going to explode. Then he looked at me. I was still smiling. Jack was by my side, confused, not understanding what I was doing. "Sure, ma'am," the guard finally said. "I will hand it to him." "Thank you," I responded. "It is very important that he opens it during the toast, in front of everyone. Tell him it is a special surprise from me." The guard nodded. He took the box and entered the ballroom. Jack pulled my arm. "Eleanor, what did you do? What is in that box?" I just smiled more. I took his hand and we began to walk back toward our car. People kept looking at us. They kept whispering. They kept laughing, but I didn't care anymore. Because in 2 hours, when Julian opened that box, when he took out what was inside, when all his guests saw what I had discovered, the laughter would turn into screams. And my son, the man who banned me from entering his own party, would wish he had never been born. We got into the car in silence. Jack started the engine, but didn't drive off. He stayed there, hands on the steering wheel, staring straight ahead. I could see his jaw trembling. He was furious, hurt, humiliated. And I understood perfectly, because I had felt that same fury for 3 years. Since the day I introduced him to Julian as my new husband, and Julian looked at me as if I were trash. "Are you going to tell me what is in that box, or am I going to have to wait like everyone else?" Jack finally asked. His voice sounded tense, controlled, as if he were making a superhuman effort not to yell. I put my hand over his. "Justice," I told him. "There is justice in that box." Jack turned to look at me. His brown eyes, those eyes that always looked at me with so much love, were now full of confusion. "Eleanor, I don't understand anything. Your son just humiliated us in front of the whole world. He put our photo at the entrance as if we were criminals. And you give him a gift with a smile. What is going on?" I took a deep breath. I had kept this secret for so long. Not even Jack knew what I had been doing for the last 3 years. No one knew, except Caleb. Caleb, Julian's trusted accountant. Caleb, the man who had been working at my son's company for 7 years. Caleb, the man who was actually working for me. 3 years ago, I began to explain. When I met you at that coffee shop, when I fell in love with you, when I decided I deserved to be happy again after 15 years of loneliness, I told Julian about you. I was so excited. I thought he would be happy for me. I thought he would understand that his mother also had the right to love and be loved. Jack nodded. He remembered that day. I had arrived at his woodshop crying, devastated, after having spoken with Julian. "He told me you were a starving nobody," I continued. "He told me you were taking advantage of me. He asked what people would think when they saw him, a successful businessman with a mother married to a poor carpenter. He told me I was embarrassing him, that I was destroying his image." My voice cracked. Even after 3 years, those words still hurt like knives. "He asked me not to marry you. He offered me money to leave you, $5,000. He told me that with that you could start a business in another state and leave me alone, as if you were a stray dog that needed to be gotten rid of." Jack closed his eyes. He gripped the steering wheel so hard his knuckles turned white. I refused. "Obviously," I continued speaking. I told him I was going to marry you with or without his blessing. And then Julian told me something I will never forget. He looked me straight in the eye and said, "Then you are no longer my mother. I don't want to see you again. I don't want you coming to my house. I don't want you to meet my future children. And if you ever see me on the street, cross to the other sidewalk because I am not going to greet you." The silence in the car was so thick you could touch it. Jack had his eyes closed. A tear ran down his cheek. He had never known those exact words. I had only told him that Julian didn't approve of our relationship, but I had never told him how cruel my son had been. That day, I continued, when I walked out of Julian's office, when I went down in the elevator and walked the streets crying, I passed a building that had a sign that said, "Sterling Private Investigations and Associates." And something in my head clicked. I thought, if my son can be so cruel to me, the woman who gave him everything, what else is he capable of doing? What else is he hiding? Jack opened his eyes and looked at me with an expression I had never seen on him. A mix of surprise, admiration, and a little fear. "I hired an investigator," I said. "I spent all my savings, $2,000 I had saved for emergencies. I asked him to investigate Julian, his company, his finances, his business relationships, everything." "Eleanor." "Wait," I interrupted him. "Let me finish." The investigator worked for 2 months, and what he discovered was incredible. Julian was not the honest and successful businessman everyone believed. He was embezzling from the company. He had hidden bank accounts. He was stealing money from investors. He had set up a complete financial fraud scheme. Jack's jaw dropped. "What?" "But that wasn't all," I continued. "The investigator told me he needed someone inside the company. Someone who could access the internal records, the computers, the confidential files." And then I remembered Caleb, the accountant. Yes, Caleb had worked with my late husband many years ago. He was a young boy then, just graduated. My husband helped him get his first job. Caleb was always grateful to our family. When my husband died, Caleb came to the funeral. He hugged me. He told me if I ever needed anything at all, he would be there for me. I stopped to take a breath. The memories were flowing so fast I struggled to organize them. I went to find Caleb. I told him what Julian had done to me. I told him about the investigator. I told him about the fraud, and I asked for his help. I asked him to infiltrate Julian's company, to get a job there, to earn his trust, and to gather evidence, all possible evidence, and he accepted. Without thinking twice, I answered. He told me he owed everything to my husband, that it was time to pay that debt. So he updated his resume, applied for the accountant position at Julian's company, and they hired him. That was 3 years ago. Jack looked at me as if I were another person, as if he didn't know me. And maybe he was right. Maybe he didn't know this part of me, the part that was capable of planning revenge for 3 years, the part that was capable of infiltrating a spy into her own son's company. For 3 years, I continued, Caleb has been gathering information, documents, emails, audio recordings, bank transfers, fake contracts, everything. Every little piece of evidence of Julian's fraud. And a week ago, Caleb handed me an envelope with everything. Everything I needed to destroy my son. I took my phone out of my purse. I opened an app. A live image appeared on the screen. It was the interior of the ballroom. I could see the tables decorated with ivory tablecloths, the giant floral arrangements in the center of each table, the crystal chandeliers hanging from the ceiling, the orchestra playing in a corner, and in the center of the room, on a special table, was the gift box I had left. My box, surrounded by other gifts that looked tiny in comparison. Caleb installed a hidden camera in the ballroom this morning, I explained, when he came to supervise the decoration. No one suspected a thing, and now we can see everything happening in there. In real time. Jack looked at the screen. His expression was of absolute astonishment. "Eleanor, this is madness?" I finished the sentence for him, maybe. But my son humiliated me. He rejected me. He treated me like trash. And worst of all, he took something from me that is priceless, my dignity as a mother. So now I am going to take something from him. I am going to take everything he has, his company, his reputation, his freedom, The car was silent again. On the phone screen, guests were starting to arrive. Men in expensive suits, women in dresses that probably cost more than our car. Everyone smiling, everyone happy, everyone celebrating the wonderful Julian Sterling, the businessman of the year, the man who had built an empire from scratch. But I knew the truth. And in less than 2 hours, everyone else would know it too. Jack and I sat in the car, watching the phone screen as if it were a movie. But it wasn't a movie. It was real. It was my son's birthday party. And every person entering that room was one more piece of the puzzle that was about to come together in the most devastating way possible. "Look," I said, pointing at the screen. "There is Mr. Robert Sterling. He is the main investor in Julian's company. He put almost $2 million into the last project." Jack squinted at the silver-haired man who had just walked in. He wore an impeccable black suit and had a woman on his arm who seemed to be half his age. "And what does he have to do with all this?" "That man doesn't know his money never reached the project," I replied. "Julian diverted $1,200,000 to an offshore account in the Cayman Islands. The project is being built with cheap materials, unskilled labor, and forged permits. In 6 months, when the building is finished, it's going to start having structural problems, and Mr. Sterling is going to lose all his money." Jack let out a low whistle. "And that is in the documents in the box." "That and much more," I said. "There are copies of the bank transfers. There are emails where Julian orders Caleb to falsify the financial reports. There are photographs of the poor quality construction materials. There is everything." On the screen, more people kept arriving. I recognized several of them. The mayor of the city, the director of the biggest bank in the state, 3 congressmen, powerful businessmen, all friends of Julian, all believing they were at the party of an honorable man. "There is Victoria," I murmured when I saw my son's wife appear on the screen. She wore a long gold dress, which probably cost $20,000. Her blonde hair was styled in an elegant bun. She had a diamond necklace that shone even through the camera. She looked like a queen, like the perfect woman for the perfect man. But I knew Victoria was as fake as my son. She came from old money. Inherited money. Money that didn't exist anymore, because her father had lost it all in bad investments. When Victoria met Julian 5 years ago, she saw an opportunity. She saw a young, ambitious man with a growing company, and she latched onto him like a leech. It was Victoria who convinced Julian to distance himself from me. It was she who told him I was a hindrance to his image. It was she who suggested he cut me out of his life when I announced my engagement to Jack. I know because Caleb heard those conversations. Caleb was there when Victoria told Julian, "Your mother is an embarrassment. What are our friends going to think when they know she is married to a carpenter? You have to distance yourself from her." And Julian obeyed, like a trained puppy. "That woman is going to be the first to abandon him when everything blows up," I said, pointing at Victoria on the screen. "The moment she sees the money is gone, she is going to disappear. She probably already has another rich man in her sights." Jack put his hand on my shoulder. "Eleanor, are you sure about this? Once we open that box, there is no turning back. Your relationship with Julian will end forever." I turned to look at him. The streetlights illuminated his face. That honest face, full of wrinkles that came from hard work and the sun. That face that looked at me with love every morning. That face Julian had called ordinary and low class. "My relationship with Julian ended 3 years ago," I said with a firm voice. "The day he put my photo on that door, he only confirmed what I already knew. My son is dead. The boy I raised, the boy who hugged me and told me I was the best mother in the world. That boy no longer exists. What exists now is a monster. A monster who scams people, who steals, who lies, who has no heart." Tears began to run down my cheeks, but I didn't wipe them away. I let them fall, because they were the last tears I was going to shed for Julian. After tonight, I wasn't going to cry anymore. I wasn't going to feel that pain in my chest every time I thought of him. I wasn't going to ask myself where I went wrong as a mother. 40 years, I whispered. 40 years I gave that boy. When his father died, Julian was 10 years old. We were so poor that sometimes we didn't even have enough to eat. I worked cleaning houses during the day. I worked at a bakery during the night. On weekends, I washed other people's clothes to earn a few extra dollars. Everything, absolutely everything, was so Julian could have food, clothes, education. Jack knew this story. I had told him one night, lying in bed, when he asked why I had so many scars on my hands. I told him about the years of scrubbing floors with harsh chemicals, about the burns I got in the bakery taking bread out of the oven, about the times my hands bled from washing clothes in cold water. When Julian was 18 and was accepted into the university, I didn't have the money to pay tuition, I continued. It was a private university, very expensive, $15,000 a semester, impossible for me. But Julian had worked so hard. He had gotten the best grades. He deserved to go to that university. I paused. This memory always hurt me especially. My sister Sarah had a house. A small house, but it was hers. She offered to sell it and give me the money for Julian's education. I told her no. I couldn't accept that sacrifice. But she insisted. She told me, "He is your son, Eleanor. He is my nephew. We have to help him." So she sold her house. She gave me the $80,000 they paid her. And with that, I paid for Julian's 4 years of university. Jack squeezed my hand. He knew what was coming. Sarah had to go live in a small apartment, to rent. She could never buy another house again. When she was diagnosed with cancer 2 years ago, she didn't have money for the treatment. I asked Julian for help. I begged him. I told him his Aunt Sarah had sold her house so he could study, that without her, he would never have gone to college, that he would never have built his company, that he owed her everything. The rage began to rise up my throat like hot lava. And do you know what he told me? He told me he didn't owe anyone anything, that he had built his success with his own effort, that it wasn't his problem that Sarah was sick. He gave me $500 and told me not to bother him again with those things. Jack let out a curse under his breath. Sarah died 6 months later. I finished. She died in a public hospital, in a bed shared with another patient, without the treatments she needed. And Julian didn't even go to the funeral. He said he had an important business meeting, a meeting more important than saying goodbye to the woman who sacrificed her home for him. The phone vibrated in my hand. It was a message from Caleb. "It is almost time for the toast. Everything is ready. The box is in position. The cameras are working. Some journalist friends of mine are mixed among the guests. When this explodes, it is going to be on all the news." I showed the message to Jack. He read it and nodded slowly. "Journalists?" he asked. "Caleb invited 3 investigative reporters," I explained. He told them they were going to witness the fall of the businessman of the year. He gave them a preview of the story. They are there with hidden cameras and recorders. When Julian opens that box, when everything comes to light, they are going to document every second. And tomorrow morning, my son's face is going to be in all the newspapers, in all the news, on all the TV channels. On the phone screen, the ballroom was completely full now. The tables were occupied. Waiters served champagne in crystal glasses. The orchestra played soft music. Everything was elegant, refined, perfect. And in the center of it all, on a table specially decorated for gifts, was my box. The silver box with the maroon bow. Small, discreet, deadly. Julian appeared on the screen. My son, tall, with black hair slicked back with gel. He wore a charcoal gray suit that probably cost $5,000. He had a watch on his wrist that shone so much it was noticeable even in the image. A Rolex, $50,000 on his wrist, while his mother lived in a house where sometimes she had to decide between paying the electricity or buying food. Julian was smiling, hugging people, shaking their hands, laughing at jokes that probably weren't funny, acting like the perfect host, like the successful man everyone admired. But I saw beyond that facade. I saw the 10-year-old boy who cried in my arms when his father died. The boy who promised me that when he grew up he was going to take care of me, that he was going to buy me a big house, that he was going to give me everything I deserved. All lies. "Almost time," I murmured, looking at the clock. 20 minutes left for the toast. Jack started the car. "Let's go home," he said. "This is going to be long, and I want you to see it from a comfortable place." While we drove back, I couldn't stop looking at the screen. I couldn't stop looking at my son. I couldn't stop thinking about everything he was about to lose. And for the first time in 3 years, I didn't feel guilt. I didn't feel sadness. I only felt peace. Because justice, finally, was about to arrive. We arrived home just as the sun finished setting. Our house. A place so different from the hotel where Julian's party was being held. They seemed to be on different planets. We lived in a humble neighborhood, in a 2-bedroom house we rented for $800 a month. The walls needed painting. The ceiling had a damp spot in the corner. The furniture was old, bought at garage sales or given by neighbors, but it was our home. Jack had built the living room shelves with his own hands. He had repaired the kitchen table we found on the street. He had sanded and varnished the chairs until they looked like new. Every corner of this house had his love, his work, his dedication. I sat on the worn brown sofa. Jack went to the kitchen and returned with 2 cups of hot tea. He sat next to me and put his arm around my shoulders. I placed the phone on the coffee table so we could both see the screen. In the hotel ballroom, the waiters began to serve dinner. Huge plates with food that probably cost $200 per person. Lobster, imported steak, caviar, wine that cost more than our monthly rent. The guests ate and drank as if money meant nothing, because for them, it really meant nothing. "There is Caleb," Jack said, pointing at the screen. He was right. Caleb had just appeared in the image. He wore a simple black suit. Nothing ostentatious, nothing that drew attention. He was a 42-year-old man, thin, with glasses, the type of person who goes unnoticed anywhere. And that was exactly what made him perfect for this job. Caleb approached the gift table. He pretended he was arranging the cards, but I knew what he was really doing. He was ensuring my box was in the exact position. He was checking that the hidden cameras had the perfect angle. He was setting the stage for the most important moment of the night. My phone vibrated. Another message from Caleb. "All set. The microphone in the box is working perfectly. When he opens it, every word he says will be recorded. The journalists are in position. One is sitting at table 7. Another is near the stage. The third is by the exit to capture reactions when people start to leave. This is going to be historic." I showed the message to Jack. He shook his head, still unable to believe what we were doing. "How many times did you check that everything was correct?" he asked me. "Hundreds," I answered. "Caleb and I have planned every detail for months. Every document is verified. Every signature is authenticated. Every bank account number is confirmed. There is no way Julian can say it is fake. There is no way he can escape." On the screen, Julian was standing now, gently tapping his glass with a knife to get everyone's attention. The sound resonated through the hall. Conversations stopped. The music stopped. Everyone turned to look at him. "Ladies and gentlemen," Julian began with that confident and arrogant voice he had developed over the years. "I want to thank everyone for being here tonight, for celebrating one more year of life with me. But more than that, for celebrating another year of success for our company." Applause filled the room. People raised their glasses. Julian smiled like a king, receiving tribute from his subjects. 10 years ago," he continued, "I started this company with nothing more than an idea and a lot of determination. Today, we are one of the most important real estate development firms in the state. We have built 50 buildings. We have generated thousands of jobs. We have transformed this city." More applause, more smiles, more adulation. I felt nauseous listening to him. "I started with nothing," he had said, as if I didn't exist, as if all those years of sacrifice meant nothing, as if my sister Sarah hadn't sold her house to pay for his education, as if 40 years of my life dedicated to him were invisible. "And none of this would have been possible without the support of incredible people," Julian continued. "My wife, Victoria, the love of my life." Victoria stood up and blew him a kiss. The room erupted in applause again. She smiled with that perfect, fake smile she practiced in front of the mirror. "My business partners, my investors, my friends, all of you have trusted me and my vision, and I want you to know that that trust will never be betrayed." Jack let out a bitter laugh. "Never be betrayed. What irony!" "Wait for it," I told him. "The best part is coming." On the screen, Julian approached the gift table. "And now," he said with a smile, "comes my favorite moment of the night, seeing what wonderful gifts my generous friends have brought me." People laughed. Some shouted things like, "Open it," or This year we outdid you. Julian began to open the gifts one by one. A gold pen from the mayor, a limited edition watch from a business partner, a bottle of whiskey that cost $3,000, tickets to a VIP box at the stadium. Every gift was more extravagant than the last. And then his eyes fell on my box. The silver box with the maroon bow. "And this one?" he asked, picking it up. "It has no card." One of the security guards approached quickly. He whispered something in his ear. I saw Julian's expression change. First, confusion. Then annoyance. Then something that looked like cruel amusement. "Ah," he said aloud for everyone to hear. "It seems this gift is from my mother." There was an uncomfortable silence in the room. Some people looked at each other. Others looked down at their plates. Because everyone knew. Everyone had seen the photograph at the entrance. Everyone knew I had been banned from entering. "My dear mother," Julian continued with a tone of voice that was half mockery, half contempt, "the woman who decided to marry a carpenter and become the shame of the family. I wonder what gift she has brought me. Probably something handmade, something quaint and humble." People laughed. Some nervous laughter, others genuinely cruel. Victoria had a huge smile on her face. She was enjoying every second of this. My hands closed into fists. Jack put his hand over mine. "Breathe," he told me softly. "Almost there." Julian shook the box near his ear. "It doesn't sound heavy," he said. "Maybe they are discount coupons, or maybe cooking recipes. My mother was always very thrifty." More laughter. Mr. Sterling, the main investor, was laughing so hard he almost choked on his wine. "Well," Julian said finally, "I suppose I should open it. After all, it is from my mother, the woman who gave me life." There was so much sarcasm in that last phrase it could have cut steel. He began to remove the silver paper slowly, making a show of it. People cheered him on. "Open it!" they shouted. Julian smiled, enjoying the attention, enjoying humiliating me even in my absence. Finally, he removed all the paper. Underneath was a simple cardboard box, brown, unmarked, no decoration. Julian opened it, and then everything changed. His smile froze. His eyes widened. The color disappeared from his face, as if someone had pulled a switch. His hands began to shake. "What is that?" Victoria asked, approaching. "What did she give you?" Julian didn't answer. He couldn't. He was paralyzed, looking into the box as if he had just seen his own death. Because that was exactly what he was seeing. His death. The death of everything he had built with lies and fraud. He put his hand in the box with slow, almost robotic movements. He took out the first document. A white paper. With numbers. With signatures. With official seals. It was the bank statement from his offshore account in the Cayman Islands. The account where he had deposited the $1,200,000 stolen from Mr. Sterling's project. The numbers were there, in black and white, impossible to deny. "What is that, darling?" Victoria asked again, now with a tone of worry in her voice. Julian still couldn't speak. He put his hand in the box again. He took out more papers, more documents, more evidence, contracts forged with his signature, emails where he ordered Caleb to create fraudulent financial reports, photographs of the cheap construction materials he had used in the buildings while charging as if they were high quality, bank transfers to ghost accounts, receipts of bribes to building inspectors. Everything was there. Every crime, every lie, every fraud. The glasses began to fall from his hands. The crystal smashed against the marble floor. The sound was like a gunshot in the absolute silence that had fallen over the room. Jack and I looked at each other. On the screen, we could see the chaos beginning to form. People were getting up from their chairs. The murmurs grew. Someone screamed, "What is happening?" Caleb appeared in the image. He approached Mr. Sterling. He showed him something on his phone. I saw the investor's face transform from confusion to absolute fury in a matter of seconds. "It started," I whispered. "There is no turning back now." And while we watched the screen, while we watched Julian's perfect world begin to crumble piece by piece, I felt something I hadn't felt in 3 years. I felt peace. Mr. Sterling stood up so violently his chair fell backward. The sound of metal hitting the floor resonated through the room like thunder. His face, which seconds before had been relaxed and smiling, was now red with fury. The veins in his neck stood out like tense ropes about to snap. "Sterling," he shouted with a voice that made the glasses on the tables shake. "What the hell is this?" Julian looked up. His eyes were glassy, lost, as if he couldn't process what was happening. He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. The documents kept falling from his trembling hands, scattering on the floor like dead leaves. Caleb had approached Mr. Sterling and was showing him his tablet. From our position, we couldn't see what he was showing him, but from the investor's reaction, we knew exactly what it was. The numbers, the transfers, the offshore accounts. All the money Julian had stolen. $1,200,000, we heard Caleb say with a firm and clear voice, diverted from the Palms residential project account directly to a personal account of Mr. Sterling in the Cayman Islands. Here are the dates. Here are the exact amounts. Here is his signature authorizing every transfer. The room exploded. Not literally, but it might as well have. The silence broke into 1,000 pieces. Everyone began to speak at the same time. Voices rose over one another. People stood up from their seats. The waiters stopped serving and stood there, not knowing what to do. "That is a lie!" Julian shouted, finally finding his voice. "They are fake documents. Someone is trying to destroy me." But his voice sounded hollow, desperate. Even he knew there was no way to deny what everyone was seeing. Mr. Sterling walked toward Julian with heavy and deliberate steps. His shoes hit the floor like hammers. When he reached my son, he grabbed him by the shirt collar and pulled him close. "Fake?" he hissed with venom in every word. "Are you telling me my signature on these contracts is fake? That my bank account numbers are fake? That the transfers my bank is going to confirm for me tomorrow morning are fake?" Julian tried to pull away, but Mr. Sterling had him gripped tight. "Mr. Sterling, please, let me explain. There is nothing to explain." The investor pushed him so hard Julian stumbled backward and fell onto the gift table. The boxes scattered. Bows and colored papers flew everywhere. "You stole from me. You stole $2 million from me and thought I was never going to find out." Victoria ran toward Julian. Honey, get up. Tell them it's a lie." But when Julian stood up, when Victoria saw his expression, when she saw the guilt written in every line of his face, she stopped. Her eyes, those eyes that always looked at Julian with fake adoration, now looked at him with something different. Horror, realization, and something else. Calculation. "No," Victoria whispered, taking a step back. "No, no, no." "Julian, tell me it isn't true." My son didn't answer. He couldn't, because it was true. Everything was true. Another man stood up. I recognized him immediately. It was Mr. Patrick O'Connell, another major investor. He had put $800,000 into a different project, an office complex that was supposedly already finished, but in reality was still under construction with third-rate materials. Caleb called out to Mr. O'Connell with a trembling voice. "My project is there too." Caleb nodded gravely. Executive Tower Project. $650,000 diverted. Construction materials bought at 1/3 of the budgeted price. The difference deposited in Mr. Sterling's personal accounts. Mr. O'Connell put his hands to his head. My God, I am going to lose everything." And then it was like seeing dominoes fall. One after another, one investor after another stood up. One shouted, "Another cursed." Another pulled out his phone to call his lawyer. The chaos was absolute. The elegant birthday party had turned into a nightmare scene. The 3 journalists Caleb had invited were recording everything. I could see them moving through the crowd, capturing every angle, every reaction, every moment of destruction. Tomorrow this would be on all the newscasts, in all the newspapers, on all social media. Silence. The voice came from the back of the room. It was a female voice, strong, authoritative. Everyone turned around. A woman of about 50, dressed in a pearl gray pantsuit, walked toward the center of the room. She held a badge in her hand, a gold badge that shone under the lights. "I am District Attorney Catherine Vance," she announced, showing the badge for everyone to see. "And I am here because I received an anonymous tip about fraudulent activities related to Sterling Developments." Jack looked at me with eyes wide open. "You called the police?" I shook my head. It wasn't me. It was Caleb. 3 days ago, he sent a complete package with all the evidence to the district attorney's office. He told them that tonight, at this party, they were going to have the opportunity to arrest Julian in front of everyone he had swindled. DA Vance approached Julian. 2 more officers entered the room behind her. They wore uniforms. They carried handcuffs. The situation had just gotten 100 times more real. "Mr. Julian Sterling," the agent said with a clear and professional voice, "you are under investigation for financial fraud, embezzlement of funds, forgery of documents, and tax evasion. You are going to need to come with us to answer some questions." Victoria let out a scream, not a scream of sadness, a scream of pure panic. Because she knew what this meant. She knew the money, the status, the life of luxury, everything was about to disappear. "I didn't know anything," Victoria shouted, pointing at Julian. "I didn't know what he was doing. This is his fault. Only his." The speed with which she abandoned my son was impressive. Not even 5 minutes had passed since the fraud was discovered, and she was already betraying him publicly. Julian looked at her with an expression of complete bewilderment. "Victoria?" "No." She recoiled as if he had a contagious disease. "Don't talk to me. Don't come near me. You lied to me. You told me the business was legitimate. You told me we were rich because of your talent." She took off her wedding ring, the diamond ring that cost $120,000. She threw it on the floor in front of Julian. The metal bounced once, twice, 3 times before stopping. "Keep your ring," Victoria spat. "Keep everything. I don't want anything from you. Nothing from a criminal." And then, in front of 200 people, in front of the journalists' cameras, in front of the furious investors and the police, Victoria turned around and began to walk toward the exit. Her heels clicked on the floor. Her gold dress shone under the lights. She didn't look back a single time. "Coward," Jack murmured, looking at the screen. "She is a complete coward." I said nothing. I just watched. I watched as everything fell apart. I watched as my son, the man who had humiliated me, who had put my photo on the door with a cruel sign, was now being humiliated in the same way, but multiplied by 1,000. DA Vance moved closer to Julian. "Mr. Sterling, I need you to come with me." "Wait," Julian said with a broken voice. "Wait, please. There is a mistake. There has to be a mistake." "There is no mistake," the agent responded. "We have bank documents. We have emails. We have testimonies. We have enough evidence to press criminal charges against you." Julian looked around desperately, looking for help, looking for an ally, looking for someone to say this was a nightmare and he was going to wake up soon. But there was no one. The investors looked at him with hatred. The other guests looked at him with contempt or with morbid curiosity. The employees of his company who had come to the party now backed away, trying to get as far as possible from him. No one wanted to be near the man who had just been exposed as a fraud. Julian finally called out to Caleb. "Caleb, you are my accountant. You know this is a misunderstanding. Tell them the numbers are wrong, that there is an explanation." Caleb walked forward. He stood in front of Julian, and for the first time in 7 years of working together, he looked him straight in the eye without submission, without fear, with something that looked like cold satisfaction. "There is no misunderstanding, Julian," Caleb said with a calm voice. "The numbers are correct. The accounts are real. The transfers are documented. Everything is true." Julian looked at him without understanding. But you are my employee. You work for me." Caleb smiled. It wasn't a big smile, just a small movement at the corners of his lips. But it was enough. "No," Caleb said. "I never worked for you. I worked for your mother." The silence that followed was so deep, I could hear my own heart beating through the phone. Julian blinked. Once, twice, as if his brain couldn't process those words. "What? Your mother, Eleanor," Caleb continued. "The woman you humiliated? The woman you banned from entering your party? The woman who sacrificed 40 years of her life for you? She hired me 3 years ago. She asked me to infiltrate your company, to gather evidence of your crimes, and that is exactly what I did." Julian's face transformed. It went through shock, through confusion, through realization, and finally landed on something resembling absolute terror. "No," he whispered. "No, that isn't possible. It is more than possible, Caleb said. It is the truth. Every document you see here, every number, every piece of proof, I collected. For 3 years. And your mother kept it all, waiting for the perfect moment to destroy you. The murmurs began again. Louder, more intense. The story had just gotten even more dramatic. It wasn't just a fraud discovered by accident. It was revenge. Planned. Executed. Perfect. Julian fell to his knees. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't theatrical. Simply his legs stopped holding him, and he collapsed on the marble floor like a building coming down. The documents he was still holding scattered around him, forming a perfect circle of incriminating evidence. My mother whispered, looking into the void. My mother did this. D.A. Vance signaled to the 2 officers. They approached Julian with handcuffs ready. But before they could touch him, my son looked up at Caleb with eyes full of tears. Why? He asked with a broken voice. I trusted you. I paid you well. I treated you with respect. Why did you betray me? Caleb crouched down until he was at Julian's level. When he spoke, his voice was soft but full of something that sounded like ancient justice. Because your mother saved my life when I was young, Caleb said. Your father, the good man your father was, gave me my first opportunity when no one else did. He gave me a job when I had nothing. He treated me like family. And when he died, your mother told me I could always count on her. That family takes care of each other. He paused. His eyes hardened. But you don't know anything about family, do you, Julian? You forgot everything your mother did for you. You forgot how she worked 3 jobs to feed you. You forgot how your Aunt Sarah sold her house to pay for your college. You forgot everything except your pride and your ambition. He stood up. He looked down at Julian with a mix of pity and contempt. So when your mother asked me for help, when she told me how you had treated her, when she showed me the photo you put on the door tonight, I didn't think twice. I did what your father would have wanted me to do. I protected Eleanor, the only person in your family who deserves protection. The camera flashes exploded. The journalists were capturing every word, every expression, every second of this revelation that was more dramatic than any movie. Mr. Sterling approached again. He wasn't furious anymore. Now there was something worse on his face. There was coldness, the type of coldness that comes right before total destruction. Sterling, he said with a calm voice. Tomorrow, first thing in the morning, I am going to file a civil lawsuit for the $2 million you stole from me. I am also going to press criminal charges, and I am going to personally ensure that every investor, every client, every person you swindled, does the same. When we are done with you, you are going to have nothing. No money, no company, no reputation, nothing. Other investors approached, forming a semicircle around Julian. They all had the same expression. They had all reached the same decision. I am also going to sue you, said Mr. O'Connell. And me, added a woman in a silver dress who had invested $500,000 in another project. All of us, said another man. We are going to destroy you legally. We are going to take down to the last penny. Julian looked at them one by one. His face was pale as death. Sweat ran down his forehead. His hands shook uncontrollably. Please, he begged. Please, we can fix this. I can pay you back your money. I can. With what money? Interrupted Mr. Sterling with a bitter laugh. With the money you stole? With the money that is in offshore accounts that are now frozen by court order? You have nothing, Sterling. Absolutely nothing. D.A. Vance approached finally. Mr. Sterling, I need you to stand up. Julian didn't move. He was in shock, completely paralyzed by the magnitude of what he had just lost in less than 30 minutes. The 2 officers grabbed him by the arms and lifted him up. His legs could barely hold him. They dragged him more than walked him toward the exit of the room. Wait! The scream came from the entrance. Everyone turned. It was Victoria. She had returned. But she didn't come alone. She brought 2 men in suits behind her. Lawyers. She had gone to get lawyers. For a second I thought she had returned to help Julian. That maybe, deep down, she still cared somewhat about her husband. But then she spoke. D.A. Vance, Victoria said with a firm voice. I want to file for divorce immediately. And I want to make it clear that I knew nothing about my husband's criminal activities. These are my lawyers. They are going to represent me to ensure that I am not considered an accomplice to his crimes. Julian looked at her as if he had just been stabbed in the heart. "Victoria, don't talk to me," she cut him off with absolute coldness. "I have nothing to say to you. My only mistake was marrying you. But that mistake ends today." She turned around again. This time not with drama, but with determination. The lawyers followed her, and Julian stood there, watching as the woman he had been married to for 5 years abandoned him without even looking back. The officers began to move him toward the exit. People parted in his path, as if he had a contagious disease. No one wanted to be near him. No one wanted to be associated with him. In a single night, he had gone from being the most admired man in the room to being the most despised. Just when they were about to take him out of the room, Julian stopped. He turned toward the cameras, toward the journalists, toward everyone watching him. "My mother did this," he screamed with a desperate voice. "She planned everything. She destroyed me." The silence was sepulchral. And then someone began to laugh, a soft laugh at first. Then another person joined in, and another, until the whole room was full of laughter. Laughter of disbelief, laughter of irony. Because even now, even after being exposed as a criminal, Julian was trying to blame someone else. He was trying to play the victim. Caleb took a step forward. He took out his phone and tapped the screen. From the room's sound system, a recording began to play. A recording of a conversation. It was Julian's voice. Clear, unmistakable. "I don't care if the materials are poor quality. The important thing is that they look good. The inspectors are paid off. No one is going to really check. And by the time problems start, we will have already collected everything and the money will be safe in the Caymans." The recording continued. Another conversation, this time with a contractor. "Fake the invoices. Put that we bought premium materials, but use the cheap ones. We deposit the difference in the account I gave you, 50-50. One more. This time with Victoria. Don't worry, babe. The investors are idiots. They believe everything I tell them. We are going to be millionaires before they realize I swindled them." The laughter stopped. The horror returned, because there it was. The definitive proof. Not just documents, not just numbers, but his own voice confessing his crimes. Julian collapsed. The officers had to hold him up so he wouldn't fall again. His face was destroyed, broken. Nothing remained of the arrogant and confident man who had given the speech minutes before. The officers finally took him out of the room. The doors closed behind him. And so, in the place where he was supposed to celebrate his 38th birthday, Julian Sterling left behind everything he once had. The room was left in a strange silence after they took Julian away. It wasn't a peaceful silence. It was the kind of silence left after an explosion, when the dust is still falling, and no one knows exactly what to do or say. The guests looked at each other with confused, horrified expressions, some even excited by the spectacle they had just witnessed. The journalists were still recording. Their cameras captured every face, every reaction, every whisper. This was going to be national news, maybe international. The successful businessman who turned out to be a fraud, the vengeful mother who planned his downfall for 3 years, the wife who abandoned him in public. It was the kind of story people would remember for years. Jack turned off the phone and looked at me. He had tears in his eyes. Tears of relief, of sadness, of a mix of emotions even he couldn't identify. "It's over," he said with a soft voice. "It is really over." I nodded. I felt strangely empty. For 3 years I had lived for this moment. Every day I had woken up thinking about the plan. Every night I had gone to bed reviewing the details. And now that it had finally happened, now that Julian had lost everything, I didn't feel the satisfaction I expected to feel. I felt something different, something deeper. I felt the pain of a mother who had just destroyed her own son. "Do you think I did the right thing?" I asked Jack. My voice sounded small, insecure. He took my hands in his rough and warm hands, his honest worker's hands. "Eleanor," he said, looking me straight in the eye, "your son humiliated you publicly. He put your photo on a door with a cruel sign. He rejected you for marrying me. He refused to help his aunt when she was dying. And on top of all that, he was stealing millions of dollars from innocent people. Did you do the right thing?" "I think you did the only thing you could do. You showed him that actions have consequences. But I am still his mother, I whispered. And a mother shouldn't. A mother shouldn't have to do this, Jack interrupted me firmly. But he forced you. He made every decision that led him to this moment. You just put a mirror in front of him so he would see what he really was. We sat in silence for a long time. Outside, it had begun to rain. I could hear the drops hitting against the window, a soft and constant sound that somehow was comforting. My phone rang. It was a message from Caleb. The journalists want to talk to you. They want your version of the story. What do I tell them? I replied quickly. Tell them I have nothing to say. The facts speak for themselves. But as soon as I sent that message, the phone began to ring. It was an unknown number. I hesitated a few seconds before answering. Hello? Mrs. Eleanor Sterling. It was a male voice. Professional. Formal. Yes, this is she. My name is Richard Fountain. I am a reporter for Channel 7 News. We just covered the situation at the Grand Plaza Hotel, and we would very much like to do an interview with you. We believe the public deserves to know your side of the story. The mother who was humiliated and who... No, I interrupted him with a firm voice. I am not going to give interviews. I am not going to turn this into a media circus. What happened tonight was between my son and me, between him and the people he swindled. I don't need to appear on television to validate anything. But, Mrs. Sterling, your story is inspiring. It is a story of justice, of a woman who... Mr. Fountain, I interrupted again. This is not an inspiring story. It is a tragedy. A family tragedy that ended in the worst way possible. There is nothing inspiring about watching your own son become a monster. Good night. I hung up before he could respond. The phone began to ring again. Another unknown number. I turned it off completely. Jack hugged me. I rested my head on his shoulder, and finally the tears began to flow. They weren't tears of joy or satisfaction. They were tears of grief. Because although Julian was still alive, the son I had known, the boy I had raised, that one was already dead. He had died 3 years ago when he rejected me. Tonight had only been the funeral. Cry all you need, murmured Jack, stroking my hair. Cry for the son you lost. Cry for the years you gave him. Cry for everything. But after tonight, Eleanor, you have to move on. You have to live your life. You have to be happy. Because that man doesn't deserve more of your tears. He was right. I knew it. But knowing the truth and feeling it are two completely different things. We stayed like that for hours, hugged on the sofa of our humble home. Outside, the rain kept falling. The world kept turning. And somewhere in the city, in a cell at the precinct, my son was facing the consequences of his decisions. The next morning, when I turned on the television, Julian's face was on every channel. Businessman arrested for multi-million-dollar fraud. The fall of the Sterling Empire. Vengeful mother exposes her son's crimes. The headlines were sensationalist, dramatic, designed to grab attention. I changed the channel and it was the same. His photo, images from the party, video of him being taken out of the hotel in handcuffs, interviews with furious investors, statements from Mr. Robert Sterling promising to destroy him legally. And then Victoria appeared. She had given a press conference. She wore a sober black dress, no jewelry, her hair pulled back in a simple bun. She looked like a grieving widow. I am devastated, she said on the screen with a trembling voice. I had no idea what my husband was doing. I believed he was an honest man, a hard-working man. Discovering he was a criminal has been the hardest blow of my life. Liar, consummate liar. But people believed her. The comments on social media were on her side. Poor woman. She is also a victim. How brave for leaving him. I turned off the TV. I couldn't watch anymore. Jack entered the living room with 2 cups of coffee. He sat next to me. The journalists are outside, he said calmly. There are like 10 vans, cameras, reporters. Everyone wants to talk to you. I looked out the window. He was right. Our quiet street had turned into a media circus. Curious neighbors peeked out from their windows. Reporters knocked on our door every 5 minutes. I am not going out, I said firmly. I am not going to give them what they want. I know, Jack responded, but eventually they are going to get tired of waiting. Or you are going to have to go out to go to work, to buy food, to live your life. You can't stay hidden forever. He was right again. But for now, for this day, I just wanted to be at peace. I just wanted to process everything that had happened. I just wanted to find a way to move on. The house phone began to ring. I let it ring. After 10 rings, it stopped. 30 seconds later, it began again, and again, and again. "I'm going to unplug it," said Jack, getting up. "Wait," I stopped him. "Let me see who it is." I picked up the phone. The caller ID showed a number I recognized immediately. It was my sister, Sarah. Well, not my sister. It was her husband. Sarah had died 2 years ago. I answered with trembling hands. "Eleanor." It was James's voice, Sarah's widower. "Yes, it's me. I saw the news," he said with a soft voice. "Everyone saw them, and I just wanted to call to tell you something." I waited. My heart was beating fast. "Sarah would be proud of you," James continued. "She suffered a lot when Julian refused to help her. She died feeling abandoned by the nephew she loved so much. But if she could see you now, if she could know what you did, she would be proud. Because you showed him that actions have consequences, that no one, not even your own son, can treat you like trash without paying a price." Tears came back to my eyes. "Thank you, James," I managed to say. "That means a lot to me. Take care, Eleanor. And don't let the journalists make you feel guilty. You did the right thing." We hung up and I stayed there, holding the phone, feeling a little less weight in my chest. 3 weeks passed. 3 weeks in which the scandal didn't stop growing. Every day, there were new revelations, new investors filing lawsuits, new victims of Julian's fraud coming to public light. The DA had expanded the investigation and discovered that my son's crimes were even worse than Caleb and I had documented. He had swindled more than 50 people. He had diverted more than $5 million in total. He had built buildings that didn't meet basic safety codes. He had bribed inspectors, forged government documents, evaded taxes for years. It was a complete empire built on lies and crimes. The media didn't tire of the story. Every day there was a new angle. The fake businessman, the mother who destroyed her son, the spy accountant. It was like a soap opera the whole city followed religiously. I stayed locked in the house during those 3 weeks. I didn't speak with any journalist. I gave no statement. Jack went to the supermarket early in the morning when there were fewer reporters outside. My neighbors, who at first were annoyed by the media circus, eventually began to protect me. They told the journalists to leave me alone. That, I had nothing to say. Caleb came to visit me once a week. He brought me updates on the case. He told me how the investigation was advancing, how more victims kept appearing, how the civil lawsuits piled one on top of another. "They are going to take everything from him," Caleb told me on one of his visits. "The company was already seized by the government. His bank accounts are frozen. His house is being foreclosed. His cars, his investments. He is going to end up with nothing." I just nodded. I didn't know what to feel. Part of me felt it was what he deserved. Another part, that maternal part that never completely dies, felt pain for what he was suffering. "How is he?" I finally asked. It was the first time I dared to ask. Caleb sighed. "Bad. Very bad. He is in pre-trial detention awaiting trial. His lawyer says he is probably going to receive a sentence of 15 to 20 years. The prosecutors have too much evidence. There is no way he gets out of this. 15 to 20 years. My son was going to spend the best years of his life in a cell. He has asked about me." The question came out before I could stop it. Caleb looked at me with compassion. "Yes, constantly. He tells everyone who visits him that you betrayed him, that you are a bad mother, that you planned his destruction." But Eleanor stopped, choosing her words carefully. "He still doesn't understand. He still sees himself as the victim. He hasn't accepted responsibility for anything he did." It didn't surprise me. Julian had always been like that, since he was a child. When he did something bad, he always blamed someone else. The teacher who scolded him unfairly, the friend who had provoked him. It was never his fault, never. "And Victoria?" I asked. "Ah, her," Caleb let out a bitter laugh. "She already has a new boyfriend, a rich lawyer who represents one of the investors. I saw her a week ago having dinner with him at an expensive restaurant. She was wearing a new dress, new jewelry. She looks as if Julian had never existed. Of course, Victoria was a survivor, an opportunist. She had found her next boat before the previous one finished sinking. One afternoon, exactly a month after the party, I received a letter. It didn't come by regular mail. It had been brought by an official messenger from the prison. It was a letter from Julian. I stared at the envelope for hours. White. Simple. My name written with my son's irregular handwriting. Jack asked me if I was going to open it. I don't know, I answered honestly. I don't know if I want to read what he has to say. Maybe it is an apology, suggested Jack with little conviction. Maybe, I repeated. But we both knew it probably wasn't. Finally, when the sun began to set, I took the envelope and opened it. There were 3 handwritten pages. The handwriting was sloppy, scrawled with urgency or rage. I began to read. Mom, I hope you are happy. I hope you are celebrating my destruction. I hope you feel satisfied knowing you ruined my life. Everything I built, everything I worked for, everything disappeared because of your revenge. And why? Because I didn't approve of your marriage to a poor carpenter? Because I told you the truth about what I thought. My hands shook as I kept reading. You raised me to be successful, to be better, not to settle for the poverty you accepted. And when I finally achieved it, when I finally escaped that miserable life, you couldn't stand it. You couldn't stand seeing that I was better than you, so you decided to destroy me. Every word was like a knife. There was no regret. There was no understanding. Only rage and accusations. Everything I did to get ahead. To give a better life to my family. Yes, I took some shortcuts. Yes, I moved money in ways that maybe weren't completely legal. But do you know what? All successful businessmen do it. It is part of the game. And I was winning until you decided to ruin everything. He still didn't understand. He still didn't see his crimes as crimes. He saw them as business strategies. I hope you can live with what you did. I hope when you look in the mirror you can stand to see a mother who destroyed her own son. Because that is what you are. A cruel mother who preferred revenge over love. The letter ended without a goodbye, without a signature. It just ended. I let the pages fall to the floor. Jack picked them up and read them quickly. His expression darkened with every paragraph. This is, he began to say, but didn't find the words. This is Julian, I finished for him. This is exactly who he is. A man who is never going to accept responsibility for his actions. A man who is always going to blame others for his failures. That night I couldn't sleep. The words of the letter spun in my head. A cruel mother who preferred revenge over love. Was that what I was? Was that what I had done? I got up and went to the kitchen. I made tea and sat by the window. Outside the street was empty. The journalists had finally gone. They had found new scandals to cover, new stories to tell. We were already old news. I thought about all the decisions I had made in my life, about how I had worked until my hands bled to give Julian a good life, about how I had sacrificed everything for him, about how, in the end, he had chosen to reject me for money and status. And I thought about the victims, about Mr. Sterling, who lost $2 million, about Mr. O'Connell and his family, about all the people who trusted Julian and were betrayed. Didn't they deserve justice? Jack appeared in the kitchen. He sat in front of me without saying anything. He was just there, accompanying me in the silence. Do you think I am a bad mother? I finally asked him. He looked at me for a long time before answering. I think you are a mother who loved too much, who gave too much. And when that love was rejected, when that sacrifice was spat upon, you took the only decision you could take. You protected others from being hurt the same way you were hurt. But he is still my son. Yes, nodded Jack. And he always will be. But Eleanor, being a mother doesn't mean allowing your son to destroy others. It doesn't mean protecting him when he is doing terrible things. Sometimes, being a mother means doing the hardest thing. It means saying no. It means setting boundaries. It means letting him face the consequences. He was right. In the bottom of my heart, I knew he was right. But that didn't make it hurt less. Is he ever going to forgive me? I asked. Jack took my hand. Probably not. Probably he is going to spend the rest of his life blaming you for everything. But that is his decision. His choice. You did what you had to do. Now he has to decide what kind of man he wants to be when he gets out of prison. If he wants to keep being a victim, or if he finally wants to accept responsibility and change. We sat there until the sun began to rise. And while I watched the first rays of light illuminating the sky, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. I felt peace. 6 months passed. Julian's trial was public and extensive. It lasted 3 full weeks. The prosecutors presented mountains of evidence, documents, recordings, victim testimonies. Caleb testified for 2 full days, explaining with precise details every fraudulent transfer, every forged document, every lie Julian had constructed. I didn't go to the trial. I couldn't. I didn't have the strength to sit in that courtroom and see my son being judged publicly. But Jack went every day. He returned home and told me what had happened. He told me how Julian looked smaller and smaller, more defeated, more broken. The last day of the trial, when the judge gave his verdict, Jack came home with red eyes. He sat next to me on the sofa and took my hands. 18 years, he said with a soft voice. They gave him 18 years in prison. I closed my eyes. 18 years. My son would be 56 years old when he got out. He would have lost all his youth, all his adult life, everything. He also has to pay restitution, continued Jack. $4,300,000 to the victims. Obviously, he doesn't have that money. So everything he has, everything he earns when he gets out of prison, will have to go to pay that debt. He probably will never finish paying it. We stayed in silence for a long time. Outside the birds sang. The sun shone. Life went on as if nothing had happened. But for me, something fundamental had changed forever. That night I received another letter from Julian. This one was different. The handwriting was calmer. The words were more measured. Mom, they gave me 18 years. 18 years in which I am going to be locked in a cell, thinking about everything I lost, about everything I could have been. And the only thing I can think is that you won. You managed to destroy me completely. I hope that brings you the peace you sought. The letter ended there, without a goodbye again, without a signature. But there was something different in the tone. It wasn't just rage anymore. There was something else. Something that looked like resignation. Months kept passing. The scandal eventually faded from the headlines. New news emerged. New scandals. The world kept turning. Jack and I found a new routine. He worked in his wood shop. I got a job at a local library. We lived a simple, quiet, honest life. Caleb came to visit us from time to time. He had gotten a new job at a legitimate company. He told me that sometimes he still felt guilty for having betrayed Julian, even knowing Julian was a criminal. It is strange, he told me one afternoon while we drank coffee. I know I did the right thing. I know Julian deserved to be exposed, but I still feel like a traitor sometimes. I know, I answered him. I feel that way too. I feel like a terrible mother, like someone who should have found another way. But every time I think about all the people he swindled, about all the families he ruined, I remember why I did it. Caleb nodded. Mr. Sterling called me last week. He wanted to thank me personally. He told me that thanks to the restitution ordered by the judge, he is going to recover some of his money. Not all, but something. He told me I had saved him from losing even more. It was comforting to know that at least some victims were going to recover part of what they lost. It wasn't enough. It would never be enough, but it was something. A year after the trial, I received a call from the prison. It was the warden. He asked me if I would be willing to visit Julian. He told me my son had asked to see me, that there was something he wanted to tell me. My first instinct was to say no, that I wasn't ready, that maybe I would never be ready. But Jack convinced me. Maybe he is finally ready to talk for real, he told me. Maybe a year in prison has given him perspective. Go. Listen to what he has to say. You don't have to forgive him. You just have to listen to him. So I went. One Saturday morning, I drove 2 hours to the state prison where Julian was being held. The building was gray, cold, intimidating. They made me go through metal detectors. They checked my purse. They took me to a visiting room with metal tables and uncomfortable chairs. And then I saw him. My son, my Julian. He looked different. He had lost weight. A lot of weight. His hair, which he always kept perfectly slicked back with gel, was now short, simple. He didn't wear his expensive clothes. He wore an orange uniform that was too big for him. He looked small, vulnerable, scared. We sat face to face. Neither spoke for the first few minutes. We just looked at each other. Mother and son, separated by so much more than a metal table. "Thanks for coming," he finally said. His voice sounded different too, more sober, more broken. "They told me you wanted to talk to me," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. Julian nodded. He looked at his hands. Hands that no longer wore expensive watches or gold rings. Hands that now had calluses from working in the prison laundry. "I have had a lot of time to think," he began. "A lot of time to reflect on my life, on the decisions I took, on how I treated people, and on how I treated you." I waited. I wasn't going to make this easy for him. "For a long time I was angry with you," he continued. "I blamed you for everything. I thought you had ruined my life, that you had been cruel and vengeful, but now—" He made a long pause. "Now I understand that I ruined my own life. I made the decisions. I stole the money. I hurt people. And I treated you in an unforgivable way." Tears began to form in my eyes, but I didn't let them fall. "The photo on the door," he said with a broken voice. "Mom, that photo on the door of my party. Every night I close my eyes and I see it. And every night I ask myself how I could have been so cruel. How I could have humiliated the woman who sacrificed everything for me like that." Now the tears did fall. I couldn't stop them. "I don't expect you to forgive me," Julian continued. "I don't deserve your forgiveness. But I needed you to know that I finally understand. I finally understand everything you did for me, everything you sacrificed. And I understand that when you exposed me, when you revealed my crimes, you didn't do it for revenge. You did it because it was the right thing." I stayed silent. I didn't know what to say. After a year of waiting for this moment, of wondering if it would ever arrive, now that I was here, I had no words. "I love you, Mom," said Julian with tears running down his cheeks. "I always loved you, even when I acted like I didn't, even when I rejected you. I always loved you, and I am sorry. I am so sorry." I extended my hand over the table. After a second of hesitation, Julian put his hand over mine. His fingers were cold, trembling. "I love you too," I said finally, "and that is never going to change." "But Julian, love doesn't mean protecting you from consequences. Love means wanting you to be better, and I hope, with all my heart, that when you get out of here, you are a different man, a good man." "I will be," he promised. "I have 17 more years to work on that. To learn, to change. And when I get out, I am going to spend the rest of my life trying to make up for the damage I did." We stayed like that, holding hands, until the guard announced that visiting time was over. I got up to leave. "Will you come back?" Julian asked, with hope in his eyes. I thought about it for a moment. "Yes," I answered. "I will come back. Not soon. I need time. But I will come back." I drove back home with a lighter heart than I had had in years. Not everything was fixed. Probably it never would be completely. But there was hope, and that was enough for now. When I arrived home, Jack was waiting for me at the door. He hugged me without asking anything. He simply held me. "Are you okay?" he finally asked. "Yes," I answered. And for the first time in a long time, it was true. "I think I am finally okay." That night I sat in our small garden. I looked at the stars shining in the dark sky, and I thought about the whole journey, about the pain, about the betrayal, about the revenge, about the justice, about the regret, about the forgiveness. There were no easy answers. There were no perfect endings. But there was peace. There was truth. And there was the possibility, however small, that someday, when Julian got out of prison, we could rebuild something. Not what we had before. That was lost forever. But maybe something new, something more honest, something more real. And while I looked at the stars, while I felt Jack's hand in mine, I knew I had made the right decision. It had been painful. It had been devastating. But it had been right. Because sometimes, true love means letting people face the consequences of their actions. It means not protecting them from the truth. It means loving them enough to want them to be better, even if that means watching them fall first. And with that thought, finally, after 3 years of burden, I allowed myself to let go. I allowed myself to rest. I allowed myself to be happy,